Okay, buckle in. Um, it's story time. This is one of those stories that I don't generally tell often because it exposes my complete woo. It exposes my weird. And I think that especially women my age are very practiced at making the spiritual depths that we go to um, seem very normal and not unruly. And this story is a little unruly, but it's important because, I mean, shit, none of us has a lot of time left. The world goes by, life goes by really fast. And so I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to tell you all the weird. Okay. So this is the weird. One of them. There have been many, many, many token experiences of weird along the way in my life. And it feels so lovely to be at this stage where I'm gonna um, tell you freely and I'm unattached to your response because I love this story so much. Um, it's got a lot of tentacles that reach into lots of different parts of my life and my history. And so it was one of those profound healing moments for me because it touched on probably more than I'll be able to express in this particular sitting and telling of the story. Um, this one, I mean, I've shared it a little bit before. So just to kind of start you out in the right place, my friend, I am my name's Pam. I go by Sweet Georgia Pam. That's the brand that I've built. And the work that I do is I weave together symbolism by way of dreams and spiritual depth by way of storytelling and listening to my clients' storytelling and emotional regulation for women, usually in middle age, who are um, done living the old way of people pleasing and ignoring their own inner authority and intuition, which to this point probably has shown up sporadically, like the story I'm about to share with you, and who are ready to kind of step into a full practice of showing up with the full breadth of their power. So, hello, me from a few years ago, if that sounds like you. So, that's the work that I do. And this is a really good example of what can happen when you genuinely get into relationship with the inner world and you just trust what happens there. I want to have a caveat here because oftentimes people assume when I talk about learning to trust the inner realm that it means giving all the power to the inner realm and giving yourself over to just doing whatever your unconscious surfaces for you. That's not what this is. What I teach is the um, moral. So Jungian, in Jungian terms, he talks about the moral obligation of the ego to reckon with the unconscious, and that's what we work on together. Is like you have lived enough of your life. I'm going to get to the story. You have lived enough of your life to this point, if you're finding this, that you know how to work within the ego, and you've seen hints of what your unconscious might be providing for you that operates outside of your ego. So, what we're going to learn together by way of working in tandem on your life issues and your stories and your experiences, what we learn together is what it looks like for you to mediate between the two, between waking mind and dreaming mind, between conscious and unconscious, and develop a broader capacity to tolerate what the ego feels as threatening, which is expanding your conscious awareness. Okay, that's the intro. Here's the story. I had this horrific nightmare and I woke up out of bed with one of those 4 a.m. wake ups with my heart pounding and the most terrifying vision in my head where I was afraid to close my eyes again because I'm like, I do not want to see what's going to happen if I go back in. And I'm afraid if I fall back asleep, I'm going to go right back into this scary scene. It was very intense, more intense than my usual nightmares, but it was a very simple scene. And so what I did is I used the tools I know how to use, and what played out was life changing for me. So, and the woo is that um, this was like operating in the other realm and helping souls cross over. But it didn't have anything to do with ego because this was something that happened in the privacy of my own home and in my own mind at 3 a.m. And I've held on to it as a deep truth for me because it didn't happen for anybody else or on behalf of anybody else. It was for me, which is what I say about your dreams. That's the benefit. They are from you, they are to you, and they are for only you. So you can get help working with them. That's what I do. But you get to be the ultimate hero in your story. So the dream scene was that there was this toddler, maybe 3, 4 years old, with the most evil grin on his face. And he was standing in a very long, elongated, darkened ballroom. And I wasn't necessarily active in the dream. I was seeing it from the top corner of the room. And I saw a close up of this toddler's face. And he just had this very wicked look. And he was looking across the room, kind of underneath where I was. And I looked down, and there was a baby who was crawling towards this toddler. And in between the toddler and the baby was the object that the toddler was hoping the baby would innocently play with. And the object was a very large, very sharp steak knife. And the intensity of waking up, of like when I realized what the toddler was hoping would happen, that's what woke me up in the middle of the night. So I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to know what that is at all. But by that time in my life, I knew how to work with nightmares, and I knew that what happens in my prayer space and in my meditation space, it's the same place where my dream space is. And so I knew how to bring my guides, my higher self. For me, it is some of my loved ones, my grandparents who passed over. I just like, hey, come on, it's time to go get to work. I need your help. And I bring my angels and my connection with God. So I sat up in bed, I closed my eyes. I was like, Pam, we're going to deal with this right now. What I know is that I don't have to relive the scariest part of the dream, but I do have to take myself in my imagination. I have to walk through the dream to get to that point where it's like, this is about as far as I'm willing to go, but it is as far as I can get. Like, it's a stretch. So I closed my eyes. I called in my faith and belief and divinity. And I was like, okay, I know this is here for me. And we're just going to go handle the fear right now. So I don't have to face this anymore. Let's just face it together. So I imagined going to the scariest scene, which was I was face to face with this toddler. And before I could even think about it, I reached out and I just picked him up, but I didn't bring him close to me. That was too scary. I picked him up and I held him like out here, arm's length. And I raised him up until I was looking directly into his eyes. And as soon as I did that, I melted. I just pulled him to my chest before I could think about it, whether or not he was scary, whether or not he had ill intent, whether or not he had something to hurt me with. I just was like, this is a 3 or 4 year old. And I pulled him to my chest and I hugged him, and his head was on my left shoulder. And this is where we go woo. Okay. In the previous months and years, I had had experiences that were metaphysical in nature. And I knew that in order to handle something that feels demonic or dark or evil, that I needed to walk it or imagine giving it over to the light, that it had attached to me because I looked like a light. And I was supposed to say, I am not the light. There is a light. It's even better than this. Let me show you. And that's what I meant to do. So as soon as that thought occurred to me, he's still laying with his head on my shoulder. And I looked up in the ceiling of the ballroom, and this portal opened and light poured in. And my intention was to just raise the toddler up and give it over to the light. And as I did that and stretched this toddler out towards the ceiling, He reached over my left shoulder and I turned to look. And in the middle of the ballroom, what in the beginning was a knife had, I didn't realize it, turned into a shard of broken mirrored glass when I first went into the dream in my active imagination. And when I turned and looked, it was a silver spoon. So I reached down, I picked up the silver spoon, I handed it to this toddler, and then I raised both the toddler with his spoon into the light. And the whole scene dissipated, and I opened my eyes, knowing that something profound and foundational had happened in the core of my being just then. And originally I was like, I helped that little toddler. And it was only later that I did the math to realize that my first miscarriage had been about 3 or 4 years ago from that time. And that my most recent miscarriage had been about a year. And so I feel like the toddler and the baby crawling were representative of my own darkest wounds. And one of them was profoundly healed and changed forever in that moment. That's the kind of stuff we get to. God, I don't know how everybody doesn't always want to do this work all the time. It's so deeply intimate to your life and your experiences. And it's also so beautifully mythic. Mythic, is that the right word? In nature. It's mythic in nature. Okay, the end. I'm Sweet Georgia Pam. I hope some of this has been helpful. Sweet dreams.